Hey everyone, welcome to our PD session for teachers only. I'm so excited for this webinar, and I'm so glad that some of you could join us, and I'm sure that you will join us and more of you will join us soon. So stay tuned, and I'm going to announce the topic of our discussion for today. It is Go Beyond the Book with PBL with incredible Dr. Ron Morrain. And I would love to add here that our amazing guest speaker is an American Houston, Texas, and currently lives and works in Germany. He's a co-founder and director of studies at the Language Learning Centers Europe, which is headquartered in Düsseldorf. Yeah, I remember the name. And also, he has been working as an educational consultant and business English trainer for over 20 years internationally. This is so inspiring, and I can't wait to invite Dr. Ron Morrain. But before we dive into this incredible and super inspiring discussion, I would love to ask you a regular question here is what country and city are you tuning from, and what is your teaching role? So don't be shy and drop some comments in the Q&A box. Also, if you have any question, you can drop them also in the Q&A box, and Dr. Ron Morrain will answer on your questions. Also, don't forget to share your insights, ideas, and highlights from this PD session. Capture them and post on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or VK, it's the social network in Russia. Use these hashtag or tag Teachers Love Edu and Teachers Love Edu. All the context of Dr. Ron Morrain are carefully, they are in the collection. I put them into the collection really carefully that I'm going to share with you during this live session. You can give a follow to Dr. Ron Morrain on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and VK also. Can't wait to invite Dr. Ron Morrain. Welcome to our session. I'm so excited that you have joined us.
Hello, Anna. Thanks for inviting me. I'm coming to you from beautiful, sunny Düsseldorf, Germany today.
Wow, we're so excited. I was so inspired to see some of the captures from your session, from your webinars that you provided to teachers from Russia about the PBL, especially. I'm so passionate about PBL, and that's why I'm so excited that you are here.
Well, TBL and PBL are some of the most important, I think, methodologies that teachers, should integrate into their teaching practice. And so, again, we're going to talk about not just TBL and PBL, but how we can complement our books, because I know that teachers all over the world use books. Many of us have to use books, and there's nothing wrong with using books. But let's go beyond the book today and see that there are many, many things that we can do as teachers to really complement learning and lead our students to self-directedness, really becoming independent learners, and leading our learners through TBL and PBL to deeper learning, because that's really what it's all about.
So many insights I have already got from your words. I'm going to note every word of yours today. Yay. Good luck to you. The stage is yours, Dr. Ron.
Okay. Well, if we could you could share my screen there. There we go. Well, I'd like to get started with just something really simple. And that is, wait a minute, here we go, is I believe that a well thought out lesson plan is like planning a journey. So you ask yourself the question, what journey do you want to take your learners on? Because TBL and PBL will get your learners on not only discovering about themselves and how they learn, and getting in touch with their learning, but getting in touch with the learning experience, the process of learning, and also learning about other things, and not just about grammar and mechanics of language, because TBL takes you beyond the grammar and the mechanics. And so I think that's very important. So always ask yourself in the beginning, what journey do you want to take your learners on? Well, I, like many teachers, and I am a teacher, We have our mentors. We have the people we look up to. And I look up to Sagat Mitra because, he's a very well-known professor all over the world. He's retired now. And I've been to many of his talks around the world. And one of the things that struck me that he said in one of the papers that he recently published, and that was actually last year, it's the teacher's job to point young minds toward the right kind of questions. And a teacher doesn't need to give any answers because answers are everywhere. So, Sagat Mitra said that, we live in a technology age, and students need to be challenged, and they need to be challenged in a way that would lead them to discovery. And why are we just giving them exercises of fill in the blank, multiple choice, those kinds of things that we find in books? And when we can just give them something else, like driving, motivating questions to lead them to discover and find the answers for themselves, and for students to become the creators of content. Well, let's look at what we really do as a teacher. Is it just that we teach? Well, we actually do more than teach. But we as teachers are very guided by what we believe learning is, and what education is, and teaching. And so that's where we really start, in what we believe. Now, I believe that TBL and PBL are very important, and I think that it can help the students to find their potential, but we as teachers have to challenge them. We also have to support them through the learning process and help them to, realize that, they're in their comfort zone, but we got to slowly take them out of that comfort zone. And, there's some cultural problems with that, because, every culture has a different way of learning, and TBL and PBL might be something so different for them that they find it very uncomfortable in the beginning. And I'm talking about teachers, but also students, because, again, TBL and PBL could be very new for teachers, and they have to learn how to do it. It doesn't happen overnight. And of course, TBL and PBL is very goal oriented, and students, with the teachers set a goal, and through setting that goal, they are able to stay focused on reaching the goal that the teacher and the students have set together. Another thing that we do as teachers, and we forget about that, is that sometimes we're a trainer. And in order to do PBL and TBL effectively, sometimes students are going to need some skills that have nothing to do with language. So we've got to train them on how to do those, learn some new things, using technology, using apps, using a software, Excel, maybe PowerPoint, in order for them to successfully complete the goal that we have set out together. We got to keep them motivated throughout that process of TBL and PBL. TBL learning cycles are a little bit shorter than PBL. PBL learning cycles are a lot longer. And sometimes students lose their motivation. So we've got to keep them motivated throughout that. Sometimes we have to have, sit down talks with them and just talk about what's going wrong. How do they feel? Talk about their feelings throughout the learning process. And, just get away from the project for a while and sit down and just, be humanistic and talk to them about how they're feeling, because that's important to keep them motivated. And, when we sit down with teachers, this is a misconception of coaching and language coaching, but, we do act as a coach. We do give them advice. We do give them suggestions and recommendations to help them improve their learning and help them to solve problems, and that sometimes might not have to do with the project itself, but maybe with some of the skills, or maybe how they're feeling as part of a team in a project. Now, no matter what's going on from the beginning to the end of that TBL or PBL project, students in the end must feel a sense of success. Another word for success is efficacy. We always talk about teacher efficacy, but there is learner efficacy as well too. Our learners need to feel that they really are accomplishing something, that they really are progressing, and that they're having success with what we're doing with them, especially in very long learning cycles like PBL. So we're not only teachers, we're coaches, we're mentors, we're trainers, we're advice givers, and sometimes we're even a cheerleader. So, well, I could go on and on about why we should use TBL and PBL in our classes with our students. But, after talking to so many teachers around the world, this is the list that I've compiled, which I think is very important on the different reasons why we should be using TBL and PBL for language learning, because, TBL and PBL can be used for other things as well, too. But I think the most important thing is it helps to flip the classroom and drives the learning cycle with a meaningful goal. And that's either if you're doing a face-to-face class or if you're doing online learning. Another thing is that it changes the learning dynamics. It moves from a very teacher-oriented learning to student-oriented learning. And TBL and PBL is very student-oriented learning. So for those teachers who come from cultures where the teacher's always the middle point, they might find it difficult because our roles as teachers do change with TBL and PBL. It also helps to promote existing skill sets and supports new skills development. TBL and PBL doesn't, we can't expect that our students are going to know all the language that they're going to have to know to successfully complete the task. And, we can't be teaching them language throughout. They're going to learn by themselves. And one of the most important things about TBL and PBL is let them go to Google, let them find the language, let them find articles for themselves where it's something about the topic they're dealing with or the thing that they're dealing with. And by getting them to go to the internet, they're sort of learning to research and curate. And curate is maybe just, separate all, they gather the information, but they have to decide what's important and what's not important. And that also it helps for them to see themselves as content creators. With books, we just give them the book, the content's there. All they have to do is open a page and they look at it. And that's a different kind of learning. Again, I'm not against books. Books are great, but this is about going beyond the book. And another thing that it does, it helps to incorporate the concept of scaffolding. Scaffolding is very important for CLIL, for TBL, and also for PBL. And another word for scaffolding is chunking. We could see scaffolding and chunking, although they are two different things. If you chunk well and you add increased complexity, you're going to be scaffolding along the way. And that's going to happen with TBL and PBL. And it helps to deal with personal learning preferences that students bring to the table. Our students, no matter if they're teenagers, university students, or adult learners, and they all have some life experience, and they bring that life experience to the table, not only skills, but also life experience. And if we give them the right topics and choose well with them, we'll be able to really get them motivated through TBL and PBL, and they will be able to use the skills and life experience that they bring to the table. Well, not all of our learners come to this, to the class or to our group with the same learning language levels. And so we have to, TBL and PBL is a great methodologies to use when you're dealing with different language levels, what we call differentiated learning. But, there are other different aspects of individuals that you have to consider, and that is the social capital that they bring to the table, their life history, who they are, where they come from, their family. All of those things play an important role in learning, and also their socioeconomic level within society. That's also very important. And diversity and making them feel that, they're not really different than us. There's a lot of things that are the same, and making them feel that they're part of the group, and that's inclusion. So, this is another great aspect of one of the win-win situations through TBL and PBL. And number 7, it takes advantage of experiential learning. Again, people come to the table with life experience, with hard skills, soft skills, but they also come to the table wanting to learn, and by by using TBL and PBL, we're able to really create new experiences for them, some new know-how and new skills along the way. And that's what keeps TBL and PBL really up there with some of the best methodologies to use in language learning. Well, I believe if we look at number 9, that TBL and PBL does lead to self-directed learning if you're doing it right. Now, sometimes people have a different idea of what self-directed learning is, but I think the most important aspect of self-directed learning is that learners start to take responsibility for their own learning, and that we as teachers don't learn for them. Teachers want to teach, but teaching is not the same thing as learning. And we can do a lot of teaching, but that might not mean that our students are doing a lot of learning. So we've got to really think about how much responsibility we're giving students. Is it too much? Is it enough? You got to really think about that when you're planning your TBL and PBL cycles. But you as a teacher, you know exactly who your students are, and you can kind of determine for yourself how much responsibility you give them. And again, I say TBL and PBL. Don't get rid of your course book. Those course books are really important to plan TBL and PBL cycles, but TBL and PBL helps to put life into that course book. And, when we're working with course books, they always have these predetermined outcomes and prescribed grammar. But that's not how life works. And the students need to, get away from the predetermined outcomes and the prescribed grammar that a lot of the course books cover. In number 12, when I started working with TBL and PBL well over 20 years ago, one of the things that I wanted to do was take an interdisciplinary approach to language learning. So I went around the university and spoke to the professors and asked them what they were teaching in their classes, and if I could use some of those themes in my classes. And a lot of the professors really took the time to sit down with me and educate me about some of those things. And I was able to turn those nice talks with professors into great lessons with my students, because my students were learning things in German, and they could start translating all those things and learning what that vocabulary was in English. Number 13 is it teaches learners indirectly the process of TBL and PBL, because that's another thing. Getting in touch with your learning means understanding the process that you're going through. And that's very important because that prepares students for real life. Let's talk about what really happens on the job. And on the job, when people enter the job world, our students or our workers who are students who are already there, our work every day is governed by tasks and projects. So by the time they really get to really finishing school or university or vocational college, they're ready to really tackle tasks and projects because they know how they work. And the last point right here is that if you're using TBL and PBL, that you're moving from a very instructivist way of teaching to a constructivist way of teaching. And you might ask, well, what is instructivism and what is constructivism? Well, here is a sort of simple definition of that. Now, instructivism is when a teacher or an institution, these are the policymakers and the power holders within education, they control the process and the resources and the conditions for the learner's success. And the learners themselves might not have a say-so in really how learning is going to be for them, because it's already been predetermined. The main stakeholders, the learners, really are not part of the decision-making process. And so again, learner agency is suppressed. But through TBL and PBL, you'll be able to really support learner agency, learner efficacy, voice and choice, and that's important. Now, constructivism, and I have to say constructivism, is TBL and PBL in action is when the teacher knows, is very aware that their role changes when they're using these methodologies, and they have to step aside and they take on a new role as a facilitator and as a coach, as a trainer, as a mentor. And they learn that they have to pair students with their peers and groups, and that they have to start connecting the learning processes that are really going on there, because it's more than just language learning. And they step aside and they just stand in the back of the room sometimes, or maybe just walk around the room and just observe. Good TBL and PBL teachers are great observers. And again, as our students are working, they're creating content. And that's what constructivism is, where they're constructing something. They are the creators of content, not you. And if they're allowed to do that, they see meaning in the learning. And if they see meaning in the learning and they can make a connection to it, and we're connecting real life themes in the learning in TBL and PBL cycle, that they will stay motivated. And I think that most important thing is that teachers sometimes might have a problem with is they really have to be, improving their classroom management skills all along the way. And we get better and better at it until we can say we feel very good. Again, don't let TBL and PBL scare you, because it just takes some time to really learn how it works. And today, I want to just say that we hear so much about 21st century skills, but are we really incorporating that into the learning? Does the book allow really for students to collaborate and be creative and communicate with one another and really lead them to deeper learning and critical thinking? We hear a lot of this, but let's see how that really works. Another thing is that, if we're doing TBL and PBL, we're also doing inquiry-based learning, because TBL and PBL is very, very much question-driven. We have to ask not simple questions, questions that they automatically know the answer to, but questions which will challenge them, and that they will have to research and find the answers to. And it's through the research and the curation process that they start to acquire language in a totally different way, in a natural way, the way we learned our mother language. So inquiry-based learning is very much a part of TBL and PBL. Now, another aspect of TBL and PBL that we really must consider is TPAC. And that is, most of us are pretty good at, content. We know our content. But we really have to wonder about what about technology, and how are we integrating technology into the learning process? With TBL and PBL, it's a different, kind of approach. But we have to ask ourselves, what about our pedagogical skills? Again, you're not going to learn TBL and PBL overnight. It takes some time. And again, there are some cultural barriers that might have to be overcome, but it is possible to overcome those. Well, for me, I think it's important that before I start any TBL or PBL learning cycle, that I sit down with my students and I show them a graph like this right here. I use a graphic facilitator and show them exactly what technology I'm going to use. And I walk with them through this whole little graphic facilitator and explain to them how I'm going to use Zoom and Moodle and WhatsApp and Instagram, word wall, voice recorder, very important, and how I use Google Drive and YouTube and Messenger, Facebook, Mentimeter, PowerPoint, and PechaKucha, and how all those things are going to be part of what we need to learn, and what we have to develop, these skills that we have to develop to be really effective and successful at the end, when we present our TBL or PBL product. So this is something that I teach my students before I ever start getting into TBL and PBL. Well, there are many institutions and schools around the world who say they promote TBL and PBL. I'm very proud to say that I started the first school in Northern Europe who was working completely with TBL and PBL already in 2007. And we were training around 500 teachers from all over Northern Europe on the concept of TBL and PBL. Uh, and through my research, I actually was contacted by the Buck Institute in the United States, and because they had heard of our institution, and they started, we started collaborating with one another. And here is, the Buck Institute is the gold standard for PBL, and you don't have to spend any money to become a member of anything. Just go to their website, pblworks.org, where you can see all of the wonderful ideas that you can get to start integrating PBL into your teaching practice. There are standards, and you will get those there on their internet site. So here is just two of the graphic facilitators that they use to explain what the gold standard of PBL is. There's 7 essential design elements, and there's 7 PBL teaching practice things that you would also have to learn to start integrating PBL into your lessons. So go there to their internet site, find out a little bit more. We don't have time to go through all of this because it would take about 3 hours just to go through every single one of the aspects here on this graphic facilitator. But what are some of the things that are going on in PBL? Well, we know that we need student voice and choice, and students start to choose the projects for themselves. But in the beginning, we have to show them how it's done. So we pick some of the projects for them, but eventually we want to steer them towards being, self-directed and really voicing and choosing for themselves. We want them to collaborate. We also, this is just a reality of education. Are we educating our students to function and survive in the new modern world? So, through TBL and PBL, we'll be able to give them, a better chances to find jobs. It's about developing community partnerships as well, too. When you move TBL to its higher level, you will be asking your students to leave the school and go out and visit places, talk to other people to get information and bring that back to the classroom. TBL is about feedback and revision. That's very important. No student is going to get it right in the beginning. There's going to have to be a lot of feedback going along the way. That's when you sit down with them, either face to face or in their groups, and really talk with them and give them feedback to keep them motivated. One of the most important outcomes of feedback is getting students motivated. And when they hear positive feedback from you, they're going to go back and get more involved into their work. Let us not forget that the products that are created from PBL and TBL must be presented publicly. That's in other words, they have to stand in front of a group. They can do that either with a video, they can do it live. They can, like today, we're coming to you live on YouTube. But they do have to present that, and you will give them feedback from their results and their performance. PBL does require that after you finish, you sit down with your students and really reflect on what they did well, what could be done better, and also what they did great. Again, TBL and PBL has to do with the students creating content, and through the creation of content, they also gain more knowledge and skills. I believe that it is very important to take real world things, authentic topics, what we call realia, and give them problems that we in the world face today. That helps them to become a better world citizen, but it also helps them to be creative and problem solvers and become more concerned with the world that we live in today. I said that inquiry-based learning is very connected to TBL and PBL. So again, we teach them how to ask good questions, not just easy questions, but good questions to us as a teacher. So We want to challenge them to create good questions. But once they learn how to do that, they're going to turn right around and ask us challenging questions. So it's a two-way street when it comes to inquiry. Well, there's other things that need to be taken into consideration when we're dealing with PBL, and that is that students have to learn to, manage their time. They will be multitasking. They do need to develop their communication skills with us, with each other, and of course, in the delivery and performance of their end product. They do have to be detailed oriented, and that's where we really have to coach them and monitor them to make sure that they really are being detailed oriented when they're creating the results from the questions that we're going to be throwing at them. They will have to develop their organization skills, and of course that's very important because the end product is very much based on how they organize themselves, not just with their time, but the organization itself of the information and how they're really keeping that all organized with themselves and with their team or their group. TBL and PBL also has to do with problem solving. They're going to have many problems that they're going to have encounter throughout the learning cycle, and we have to be there to help them, but we shouldn't give them the answers. They should try to find them themselves. And again, TBL and PBL is about not just collaborative learning, but teamwork. And sometimes these are two different things. So these are some of the values, some of the skills that will come out of PBL and TBL. And when our students engage in TBL and PBL, they become explorers. They see the world in a totally different way. They become engaged in the learning. They learn to start taking risk in their learning. And that's very good because that means they're leaving their comfort zone. And they start making connections with one idea to the other. They're able to start thinking out of the box, and they become problem solvers. They learn the process of project management. They grow empathetic to, many different things that maybe they would not have thought about before. And, in a way, they become a little bit of a rebel because they're going away from how they learned before, and they're taking risk, and they're ready to go out there. They become like soldiers in a way, because they love what they're learning and they want to do more and more of it. But these are just some of the things that are going to come out of TBL and PBL. Well, we talked about the learners. We talked about those things that are happening there. But let's talk about the teachers, because what you're looking at here is the mindset of a teacher who wants to do TBL and PBL, and how they think and how they think about themselves. And it's very important to know, are you that teacher? Do you think this way? Do you see projects as the overreaching framework through which we can address other academic content and ideas? Interdisciplinary approach. And what about number 3? Do you manage your own personal improvement? Your lesson plannings? Are you a member of a professional learning community? Or do you share with other teachers? And what about your curiosity? Are you also curious? I found that through my curiosity, my students have become my teachers. They come to the classroom with such great results and are sitting there talking to me. I'm just listening to them. And it's amazing what they're telling me and what they're teaching me. And they don't even realize that they're speaking English because they were so into the process of what they were doing that it's not about language learning anymore. It's something more. It's deeper learning. And also, what about, do we see ourselves, TBL and PBL as a string, as a series of things that just get better and better as we go along, and that these are all leading to deeper learning? Now, I could talk about this right here for a long time, but again, you'll have a copy of this. You will have it on YouTube, and you can look at these things a little bit later. Well, TBL does require a little bit of lesson planning, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Go to pblworks.org and you can get all the rubrics and worksheets that you need in order to help you to start planning your next TBL or PBL cycle. It's all there for you. It's free. Go there and find out and discover all the possibilities that you have with PBL. If we're doing PBL right, remember it's about deeper learning, and deeper learning is about self-directed learning. We want our students to feel comfortable when they sit behind the wheel, we give them the keys to the car, and they start driving it by themselves. That's what self-directedness is, and I think as teachers, that's what we want to do. Well, that was a little bit of theory about PBL. Let's get to what this webinar really is about, and that's about going beyond the course book. Now, I tell all of my students, please do not come to my class without a spiral notebook that and some pencils to write with, because we're going to brainstorm. You're going to have to do some writing. One of the biggest mistakes I feel that teachers make is they think that by getting students to speak that they've done their job. But that's only the beginning. We've got to get our students to write. We've got to get our students to brainstorm and come up with ideas. And we got to challenge them with problems. And it all starts with a notebook and some pencils. I want to get to know my students. And so before we really start with TBL, I send them a graphic facilitator and tell them to prepare the answers to this in their notebook. Come to our first class and share what I need to get to know them. They need to get to know me. What are their answers to this question? I feel that if we're leading students to deeper learning, and not just cognition, but metacognition, we should start with metacognition. And that is getting learners to think about learning and how they learned before, what do they feel about learning, what are their experiences about learning, because we are going to put them through something totally different. So we got to know where we're at with students in the beginning, and the best way to do it is with a graphic facilitator. Send it to them before, and then get them used to using graphic facilitators, because one of the best ways to institute and integrate PBL and TBL into your teaching practice is with graphic facilitators. I realized that over 20 years ago when I was trying to get teachers to learn about TBL and PBL. And that's why I came up with the system of graphic facilitators as roadmaps to TBL and PBL. Well, we talked about, don't throw that book away. You need that book. And so what did I do? I got my students. This was created by a student. We sat down and we looked at our book. That was the second class. And we looked at the book that we were going to be using for the semester and for 2 semesters. And we had them break it down. The student typed this in class, and these were all the chapters that they found to be interesting. There were a lot more than that. These were some of the topics. And then we had the students on the right-hand side of this rate the topic. So each student filled out a form for themselves. We printed it out, and nobody had to write their name on it. And we asked them, 1 is the lowest number and 10 is the highest number. We want you to rate each one of these. Which one do you find very, very interesting? That's number 10. Something that you really want to do and know more about. And number 1 is, I don't really want to know that much about it, okay? I'm not interested in that. This is a great way to start with students and getting them to start flipping through the book, making decisions for themselves, and then giving you that formative information that you need to go on and plan better. So this is a different way of looking at the book, but it's a great gateway. It's a good window to lead into TBL and PBL. And here, after I do that, I tell them, please, I just want you to draw this mind map inside of your notebook. And when they are looking inside of that notebook, I tell them, you know what? Now, this one project that I'm going to show you right now was with a group of Chinese engineering students. And what I did was, you know what? All of you are engineers. You come with a lot of ideas about engineering, and I'm going to put you into groups. But before I do, our project is going to be named the Car of the Future. So we brainstormed, what do we need to know about designing the car of the future? Uh, what does it look like? All the different things. And we started brainstorming. And all I did was I went to the board, and I took a picture of that. And I wrote that on a regular chalkboard with some chalk. And they started telling me what they thought it was going to be. And you'll notice that they were also writing it down in their notebook. They mind mapped it. But then I said, okay, that looks great, but this is a project. So we're going to put you in groups, and you're going to have to design that car. And so they started drawing and making posters, working together. We had music going on in the room. They got on top of the tables. They had their computers going, and they started creating their posters. And it just turned out to be a fabulous project. It took us about 3 days to do it. Project-based learning is a little bit longer than, just a regular class. But in the end, they did their presentations and they were so proud of them. We put them all over the school so that the other teachers could see what we were doing in the classroom, because PBL is contagious. And if you really want to implement it at your school, make sure that you get other teachers involved. And one way of getting other teachers involved is by showing them the results of your group work and your class. And they'll start asking and coming to you. And then, you become the PBL expert for your school. That's one of the things I love about my job, is going to schools and teaching complete, school to all the teachers at the school about TBL and PBL. So here you just see how that cycle works about TBL, and it was the car of the future. But let us not forget, no matter what we're doing and how much fun it is, students must be creating a product, and they must be focused on that. In this case, it was a poster about the car that they were going to design. And that should never be forgotten. And of course, I gave them 3 days, and I was always on them, going to their groups, making sure that they were doing their work. Everybody was taking a role in that project, and that they kept presenting it to me, and I was always correcting their language mistakes, and I was teaching them in small groups instead of the whole class, because we're teachers and we want to teach, and they're going to make language mistakes. So we do it in little small groups instead of doing it to the whole group, because each group has their own little particular grammar problems and vocabulary problems that we have to deal with. But again, it's all PBL is about creating a product which will be publicly presented. Well, let's get into some of the graphic facilitators that I use with students. Now, what you're looking at here, and this is very important, is that this is for me. This is my graphic facilitator that I always keep for myself. And I would like to share with you that I have these right here, very large cards. And I always show this. I bring this to class right here, and I have sometimes about 30 of these that I've created, and I don't give this to the students until we brainstormed, because students do need to have a picture of really what's going on so they don't get lost. I also believe that we need to start teaching students to talk about their world first and not other worlds. I don't teach my students to start talking about England or English-speaking countries, and they start learning a little bit about talking about their own country, their own culture. So we start with little things like this, and we ask them, what needs to be improved in your community? And we brainstorm this. I still haven't shown this to the students, but this is my guide. So I can try to get, answers out of them. They do have their mind map. It's empty. and they start filling it in. I'm getting them to write and repeat to me as we go along. I'm being very Socratic, trying to get the questions out of them. But when I feel happy that we've reached a good point, then I say, okay, well, you know what? We've done a great job. Now I'm going to show you what we really need to be doing. And then I'll give that to them. I give that to them either as this right here one more time, which I have, or I have small folders which I've created for them. I have hundreds of these. I have over 1,200 of them, by the way. Or because I've learned along the way, I have my little packet right here of over 50 of them ready to go. And I can just use these as little cue cards, as you can see, to teach the class. I don't need the cards are for them. This is for me, and that's all I have in my hand. I can go to a class and I have 50 lesson plans inside of my I have 50 TBL, PBL lesson plans ready to go. And like I said, I have over 1,000 of them. So my students never really get bored. Well, let's get back to that right there. So yes, we want to get them talking about their community, things that can get improved. And this is what that cycle looks like. And here you see on number 1, I showed them the mind map, but students took a picture of it, and they took a picture of it, you'll see in number 2, with their telephone. And this is another thing about TBL and PBL, is that if you use graphic facilitators, they got the complete lesson and learning cycle right in front of them in a picture. And as long as they have their telephone, they have that lesson. And that's not always the case with books. Students will forget their books, but they won't forget their telephone. And here we had them printed out. Number 4, I had one student translate it into German so that she could understand it a little bit better. Then she went and did some research. Number 5, found some information to answer all of those questions, and that was great. I told her, but the product here was to get them to write it by hand inside of their book. And so they used the book, that notebook that they're required to have, to write a little essay about their local community. And then I checked it, gave it back to her, and she corrected that, rewrote it, and put it inside of her book. So, we went through all the cycles of, really improving writing, but they learned a lot of vocabulary. So that's a very quick cycle of how that might look like. By the way, that is the work of one of my students who laid it out on the table. I was so impressed that I had to take a picture of it. Well, there are other things that we can talk about. People can talk about food, and we have to get them to talk about food. This project right here turned out to be so fantastic. I used this with teenagers, and I used it with university students. I also used it with some of my corporate students, learners, and talking about restaurants. And our goal here, the product, is I want them to create a video about their favorite restaurant. But here is, it's very important to get, as someone said, to personalize that for them. And some students might not want to do a video. They just might want to write a restaurant review, and that's fantastic to them. But you know what? Why don't you send that restaurant review to the newspaper and see if they'll publish that? Or why don't you get the owner of the restaurant and interview him or her and let them talk about the restaurant? One of the Italian students told me, well, he doesn't speak German, he only speaks Italian. Well, I go, that's wonderful. Now you have to translate everything into English. So they had the video, but then they had little blurbs at the bottom of there translating everything so that we could understand it. It turned out to be a great PBL cycle for them. But we did it, we chunked it little by little, and we did it in class until they felt good about going to their restaurant, doing an interview, interviewing the owner, and then coming back and either showing us the video or uploading it to our group site that we have. Well, now here, status symbols is a great TBL and PBL project. And what I do is, this is why TBL and PBL are interconnected. We stay with one focus, one theme, but we break that theme down in an interdisciplinary approach. And we can see that we can get them to talk. And that's usually the communicative approach in number one, just getting them to talk and creating the language and writing some vocabulary down. Some teachers are happy with that, but not me. I want to take them further, and I want to take an interdisciplinary approach. And so here in number two, I want them to, let's take a gender approach. Do women see status symbols differently than men? That's not a closed question. They're going to have to research that and give us some proof and some evidence that maybe that's true or not true. And number three takes the approach from a status symbols from a cultural sociology perspective. And what about different cultures, and what are the status symbols in different cultures? This is very important for us to start understanding status symbol. And what about number four? That really is a really complicated one, because we want to take a historical perspective of status symbols and how have they changed over the years, and maybe create a timeline for that. And that's going to require a different kind of research. And then we can also take a business economic approach to status symbols and talk about how the advertising agency influences us and consumer behavior. Well, some students might not even know what consumer behavior is. Well, guess what? It's not my job to teach them. They have to learn it by themselves. And I'm going to ask them the next day, what is consumer behavior? And what have you found out? And so I have like 3 or 4 groups going right here. We're all talking about the same thing. It's the same project. And it could last maybe 2 or 3 days. But at the end, everybody's creating their own little product that they're going to present in class to bring it all together. So status symbols is a great PBL project to do with your learners. Let's let the learners look at themselves, look at maybe somebody else in their family or their parents. And what is Generation X? Or who is Generation Y? And who is Generation Z? Again, taking an interdisciplinary approach. We can see in number one, we're just going to define it. And then I'm going to put them into 3 different groups. I'm going to do a group of Generation X, a group of Generation Y, and a group of Generation Z. All of them are going to answer the same questions, but of course we see if they research this correctly, will come up with different answers. And again, look at the different interdisciplinary approaches that I'm taking. It's business, it's history, and a lot of different aspects of Generation X, Y, and Z. But I'm always making sure that they stay focused on the real goal, and that's creating a product which must be presented. So again, another great topic to deal with when you're dealing with PBL. Well, let's take a physiological perspective. And, we can talk about the body, and that's really important. But, when you say, oh, you're going to do that in class, this turned out to be such a lovely project that we did in class with my teenagers, and I did it with university students as well, about the heart. And we talked about, I told him, well, what do you know about the heart? And we brainstormed it. And I told him, I want to come up with 25 facts that are important for us to know. What does the heart do? Well, the first thing is it pumps blood. I told him, well, okay, we know that, but what are the things we don't know that the heart does? And so they start Googling, they start finding things, they brainstorm it, start shouting it out, writing it down, writing it in their books. And then we, always go to, how does the heart pump blood? And I asked them that question, and they were like, well, I don't know. I told them, well, you know what? Go and find out and come back and give me the answer. And, we look at the cloud number. That's number, this was a little bit foggy here. Number 5 is music of the heart. And, some people just want to do some music. So I want you to go find as many songs as you can in different languages that deal with the heart. uh, and and then let's look at the lyrics in English, and let's see what it's about and what do different cultures say about the heart, and how do they incorporate the topic of the heart in song. And of course, this is a language class, so I wanted to cover idioms. And so I gave one group, so I need you to find 25 idioms that you're going to teach us about that have to do with the heart. And that was fantastic when were able to do our language part of that. But we're talking about the heart the whole time, and we cover it from many different angles. So you can do the heart, you can do the brain, you can do anything really, the eyes if you want to. And use this same approach right here. Again, a graphic facilitator that I created with several students. We need to talk about the media. And the media is always a great little project to deal with. Here's some driving questions for your students. And here you can see that I tried very, much to, sort the questions. And this right here, I usually have 3 groups, maybe 4 groups, tackling different questions about the media. And they research them, do a little writing project. But then what I do is, because we're talking about the media, I've always asked them to do a little video to present the results, and then we put it together and make one big video about the media. So we can see that we're asking them to use their technological skills, their research skills, their writing skills, their presentation skills, their speaking skills. So, TBL and PBL, especially PBL, requires not just language, but hard and soft skills as well. We can go deeper and talk about fake news. I created this last year, 2 years ago, when we started getting a lot of things in the media about fake news. My students wanted to know really what is fake news. So we created this with the students. Again, this is voice and choice. And the students loved it, and the result was absolutely fantastic. We did a writing project for this one. The students need to know about the gig economy. I had a student, not just one, 3 young ladies who stood outside of my university lecture hall and asked me one day if I knew what the gig economy was. And of course I knew the answer, but then I realized as I was telling them the answer that was the wrong thing to do. And I stopped and I told them, you know what? I'm going to ask you 3 ladies to mind map that for me and brainstorm it amongst yourselves. Bring that to class tomorrow, and that's what our class is going to be about for the whole day. We're going to talk about the gig economy, and we're going to break it down and make a little project out of it. Again, turned out to be something wonderful. We need to talk about gender politics as well. And again, there's, sometimes some cultural barriers to these topics, but, we want to deal with, PBL should be about problem solving, seeing the world in a different way, about discovery, and also learning how other cultures think about certain things. So here, we talked about women in a man's world and some of the problems that women face. And this one right here, I had 4 groups, very difficult questions that I gave them, but it still turned out to be a great project. This again also lasted 2 days. So who would ever think that sleep is something that people would want to talk about? And, we know sleep because we sleep every day for 8 hours if we're lucky. But what I did was I broke it down into a lot of questions, did the research. I've researched all of these, and broke it down into 15 questions and assigned those to students. And we had them present this to a psychology class at the university. So we took our language class and put this together, and the psychology professor allowed my students to go to his class and teach his students about sleep. He was very happy with that, and so were the other students. And it was the first time my students had ever taught other students. So turning our students into teachers is also a great way to use PBL and TBL. Well, I believe that if you're really using the graphic facilitators, and you really are leading your students to meaningful learning. And meaningful learning does have a definition. If you're doing active learning, if you're activating that, you're going beyond the book, you're doing maybe meaningful learning, and meaningful learning leads to deeper learning. If you're getting them to collaborate with one another and not collaborate just with you, but with each other, you're probably doing self-directed learning, meaningful learning, and leading them to deeper learning. If you're letting them construct the learning, letting them be the creators of content, then you're leading them to self-directedness, and you're doing PBL right because you're leading to deeper learning. If you're dealing with authentic topics, realia, then you most likely are doing good PBL, and you're also leading them to deeper learning. And if you keep them focused on the goal of creating that product and not always about grammar and vocabulary, because they're going to learn that anyway along the way, then you are doing self-directed learning, you're doing meaningful learning for them, and you're also leading them to deeper learning. Well, we got to get them to talk about themselves in a very personal way so we can get them ready for interviews. So this is a graphic facilitator that I use. Okay, if you've been teaching for a while, you know that the product for this would be a CV. We got to get them to, sell themselves. As a former HR manager, I have to say, the question that always seemed to get students, scared was when you asked them, tell me a little bit about yourself. And they weren't really ready for that question. And it's very important for my high school students who are going to have to interview to go to some universities and also interview for internships and apprenticeships, and also my university students who will be applying for jobs, for them to learn how to speak about themselves. And this is what I do. The product for this is always a video, and they have to keep practicing in that video till they feel good about themselves. And when they feel good about the video they created, they upload it to our site, and I use that to let the other students get to know each other. So this is what I do sort of early in the semester to get them to get to know each other. We've got to talk about teamwork. Such a great project. This has been one of the most unbelievable projects I have worked with teenagers and university students, is getting them to understand the topic of teamwork. It's something that's going to follow them the rest of their life, and they need to know what it is, and they need to know it as soon as possible. Many of my groups, every year when we have our job fair, I always get one class to do this project, because they always present it at the job fair to all the students who are coming there looking for jobs. They talk about teamwork, and it's a 45-minute workshop which they give. I'm just their teacher and coach. They're the ones doing all the work. They're the ones presenting to their colleagues or fellow students at work fairs about the work we did in class. Students need to learn how to research a company. This is a great graphic facilitator for them to use when you're teaching them how to research a company and all the things they really need to look for. The product here is a PowerPoint presentation, and I always tell them, choose wisely. Choose a company that you're interested in, maybe something in a field you would like to work at, so they get to know more about maybe their dream job as well. But they also get to learn, how does the company work? How is it put together? What do they say about themselves? Is it true? Sometimes they have to go a little bit deeper and, a lot of research to find out about companies, but they find out a lot about business, and that's very important. They also need to know about what job satisfaction is. I always tell them, why don't you interview an adult and ask them these questions? And then also do the research yourself, because sometimes that's a mystery for young people of what makes them happy and what makes them unhappy at work. The sooner they know, the better. And it's our job as the teacher to prepare them for real life. So we should be teaching them these things in the classroom. This is real learning, real things that they will use. It's meaningful to them, and they will see a use for that later on in their life, maybe sooner than later. We never want our students to look back 10 years from now and say, why did I learn that? I never did ever use that information. I make sure that what I teach to my students in my projects is something they really can use in their life. Well, we got to, do formative assessment, and we've got to, do some things there with them. And that's important that we, just don't let learning, move on without stopping every now and then and asking them some questions about how is the learning going and getting them to reflect. I have a graphic facilitator for that too. Not on one, many. And I think these are some of the questions that we need to always, when we sit down with our students and, take a break from the project, take a break from learning, and let's just sit down and, have lunch together. And I do sit down with my students and have lunch with them. And they don't even realize that I'm doing this. And I have that right in front of me in my little card, and I just pull it out of my bag. It's somewhere in here because I have so many of them. But it's something that I just have, that little graphic facilitator, that I just start asking them this question, and they just start talking to me. And it's really important information that I'm getting from them about how they feel and what's important for them. And then, once they get that off their chest and we talk about it and maybe even do some problem solving, they can go back to their work and concentrate and focus on reaching the goal that we have set. One more time, just like I started, there are reasons to use TBL and PBL in your, teaching practice. And if you look at these points right here, remember, it helps to flip the classroom. It changes the learning dynamics. It promotes the existing skill sets that they bring to the table and develops new ones. It incorporates the concept of scaffolding because, we're doing great planning. We've got to scaffold that and chunk it. It deals with the, personal learning preferences. It deals with differentiated learning. And it also deals with experiential learning. Again, if you don't know these terms, go and Google them and use this video to learn more about what we're talking about here so that you can start integrating PBL as soon as possible. You want to keep your learners focused and result-oriented. You want to lead your learners to self-directedness. You want to put some life in that course book. And you want to get away from predetermined outcomes and prescribed grammar. You want to add some interdisciplinary approach to what you're doing. And, you have to teach them about learning. You have to teach them about task, and you have to teach them about projects, because that's a skill they're going to need as well when they start working, or your high school students when they go to university, they're going to need that. And in the end, TBL and PBL is about getting away from just being an instructor to a manager, someone who's not giving them content, but letting the students create content. And that's what constructivism is about. Students, self-directed, motivated, learning about the world, and creating content. If this sounds scary to you, or if it excites you and maybe scares you a little bit, then you probably should be doing it. So I do ask you to go to, pbl.org, Buck Institute, and find out more about how you can start integrating TBL and PBL into your teaching practice. Thank you very much. And I'm going to turn this back over to you now, Anna. So if we have any questions that we have to answer, we can do it now.
Thank you so much, Ron. You just blew me away with you. My boogie board page is full of notes, and I have some extra. I were taking the notes from you because the ideas are amazing. I could see through the comments that teachers are so excited and they're totally inspired. So there was a question that I want to jump on right now from Christina Botina. She's asking, didn't get the idea what the final product of teamwork project is. In the beginning, students discuss, finally, presentation, or it could be different?
Well, since I don't want to go back to that, and I think if she's asking that question, then she probably took a screenshot of that graphic facilitator, and that's this. And if we can just show this, I'm going to show this one more time here. Get this over here. So, it's always weird for me here. I hope that you can see that. Is I walk them through it. I use some of these questions as warm-up questions, but I do get them to assign different task-based learning and project-based learning are very connected. So I task some of these things to them. And they are able to work out the project themselves. Again, that's the one that I give them. But I want to also say that, and I got to just find that really quick here, is, again, I have them on cards, and I also have these as JPEGs. So I always send these to my students on their telephone because I want to eliminate paper. And I can already see, they're looking at it from their phone. And I tell them, to answer certain questions. But the product for this is we get all the groups to come together and create one presentation where each of the groups tackles a different question within that, and they stand up at the workshop at the job fair and present that to the other students at the university. That's the project that I always do with this, so that we're using students to be teachers about a certain topic that's important for all of the students at the school or university. So this is that project. This is a really great project to do at a school with the other teachers.
Wow, absolutely. So I hope, Christina, Ron has covered your question, but I'm sure he did. Thank you so much for asking. If you've got any questions, don't forget to drop them in the Q&A box. And I'm going to comment some comments again. So there is from Tamara. She will definitely want to try it. Thank you so much. People got really excited about the Ron slides. So they're asking about, can we get your slides? Ron has mentioned that there is a great website, and I have shared with the collection link that Dr. Ron Morrain has prepared a great resource pack for you to investigate. There are great websites that you can go and dive in a little bit deeper.
Anna, I would like to say that what I can do is, for all of those who subscribe to your channel, only for the subscribers, okay, is I'm going to send you a PDF, and those people who subscribe to your channel today or in the next few days will be able to get a copy of the PDF with all those wonderful instructions and graphics on there, and a copy of this PowerPoint.
Oh my God. You're so generous. Now I'm.
But it's only for the ones who subscribe to your channel.
Thank you so much. Yeah, give me a follow. And I really appreciate that, Ron. You're amazing, and you're a rock star. With all the passion that you have brought everything here today, thank you so much. I just want to share with me in my personal insights too. You told to pay attention to how much responsibility we give to us. It was my problem because I love PBL, but I haven't mentioned and I haven't noticed this fact that responsibility. Yeah. So the level of this one, they're all different. Our students, they're all different, but I haven't thought about this. Is so simple, and you have just said it, and now I'm thinking about this in this direction. It's a game changer to me.
Well, that's so important to the success of the student. Is sometimes we know who our weak students are, and we know who our strong students are. And I have to say that don't be fooled by us labeling strong students as the, big speakers, the ones who are always talking. Speaking might be their only strength. We've got to have, students who are great writers, and we've got students who have great technology skills. And, we have to learn how to, get those wonderful skills out of them, because we want them to feel part of that team, that group that we put together. And usually, I have large classes sometimes. I've had classes of 50 and 60, people doing this. And I've got to make sure that everybody stays motivated. And my job is not teaching. My job is to make sure I can manage all of that. And one of the most important things is to make sure that students feel part of that group and that they feel that they have a responsibility in that group that fits their skills. Some people are just don't want to speak, and that's okay too. But maybe they're great writers, maybe they're great listeners, and maybe they're great researchers. Everybody has something that they can bring to help the team work to reach the goal.
Their powers. Yes. Wow. And there's so many thank you in the chat, and from Kiki and from Ferry. Thank you so much. Awesome webinar. Awesome ideas from Ekaterina. And another question from Ekaterina. Thank you so much for asking questions again. What about mind map besides you about monarchy? How to create the same?
Well, that is just a mistake that I even have it there. But I do invite.
I've asked you before. Yeah.
It was. I do work with other teachers, and we have to really think things out. This right here, what you see, is not finished yet because we researched these things. And I had some teachers over to my house, and my great colleague Jane Carvel, and her and I are like design thinkers and mind mappers. We love that. And so I asked her. She's British and I'm American, and I asked her the simple question about what about the monarchy? And it was the topic that came up at one of the workshops I gave. I asked it, because it was about go beyond the book. And one of the teachers brought a book in about the Queen of England. And she said she wanted to teach her students about the Queen of England. And I was like, well, I'm not against the monarchy. Please don't get me wrong. But, we got to take that to a higher level. And so why don't we talk about not the Queen of England? Why don't we say we talk about the monarchy, and not just the monarchy in England, but what about Spain, and what about Denmark and all the other countries? What about the monarchy of the past? What about Russia? What about Greece? All of these things. And let's make it historical. Let's really get in there and make it interdisciplinary. And we started talking about it, and before we knew it, we were mind mapping the whole thing. And that's how these graphic facilitators that I show you today, or shown you, that's how they start, with us brainstorming them. So that we can get an idea of how that looks, because teachers have to have an idea of what that lesson is going to look like.
Fantastic. Oh, I had posted a few stories on my Instagram that you blew me away already. Even when the webinar has just started, I was like, wow. So there's an awesome thank you, and one more. Okay, awesome.
Well, I hope I answered Christina's question.
Yeah, sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, so here is another one. Love the lunch with students that turn into a reflective 12 questions and answer sessions. Kudos.
I do it all the time.
About food.
I call it a brown bag lunch. I tell the students to bring their lunch, please, to bring something to drink. I let students play music in the classroom. They get to, pick their music. That's music is playing in the background. We have coffee machine going on there. I let the students decorate the room the way they wanted to. And of course, I got a grant from a foundation to help me set those rooms up. I wish I could show you some pictures, but now I don't have them with me here. But you can find that on my Facebook site, where
the links are in the collection. So sorry.
Of those rooms that I created for great learning. We had teachers coming from all over Europe coming to our school to really learn how to do TBL and PBL. It was such a fantastic 13 years that I did it. And I just loved it. I learned so much myself, and about, what works, what doesn't work. But it was great. And I think over the 13 years, we probably trained over 5,000 teachers.
Incredible experience. And I have just written some titles for you. Edu Rockstar, great mentor, expert, pro, and professor, passionate educator. And this channel is nothing if there are no great and passionate educators like you are. Ronnie, you're incredible.
Well,
I
you know what?
can't stop.
Thank you for
Yeah.
the compliments, but I want to say I'm also 62 years old. And I want to say that, when we get a little bit older, we become transcendent, and it no longer has anything to do with teaching anymore. It's about sharing your knowledge with your colleagues, especially your younger colleagues. I think that's important, because I want to make sure that when I retire, that people know about not just my passion about teaching, but that my passion is contagious, and that they themselves become passionate about what they do, and just share those ideas with them, not just my passion, but my ideas and my knowledge and my experience, so that they too can feel what it is to be a teacher who has really felt inside of themselves what that feeling of success that you have when you see your students growing and developing. It's a fantastic feeling.
It's incredible. And I can see so many the words of appreciation. And myself, this wisdom that you're sharing, it's priceless. Oh my gosh, I just want
Well,
to
I'm going to say
highlight.
one more time, remember that you can get all of this information if they subscribe to your channel. And I'm going to send you the copy of the PowerPoint where they will get the graphic facilitators. And then I'll give them a little bit of a little booklet that I wrote that accompanies that, so that they can get some ideas. It's free. I'm glad to share it with my colleagues all over the world.
Incredible. Oh, I'm speechless every
I
time.
see I see I see a great question in the box. How would you teach PBL and TBL course under lockdown conditions? And I have to say, it's the
Yeah.
best way to teach. For
Yeah.
me, I just can't teach any other way online. My students know that and they love it. It keeps them motivated. It keeps them goal oriented. PBL and TBL is the best way to teach online, because you're able to optimize your, online learning time. It's not boring for them. They're totally engaged in what's going on. They want to share what they researched. They want to talk about it. And this is great. I don't have to do anything but just give them some challenging questions that, we come up with ourselves and we brainstorm. Yes, I do have my, little graphic facilitators to help me, but that might not always be the one we use. We might want to use the ones that I showed you that I created with the students. And that just gets them motivated, because they know they had a voice in the learning, and that keeps them interested, engaged, and motivated. So TBL and PBL are the greatest methodologies to use online.
Teachers and educators across the globe, they are so exhausted because of the past year. Yeah. Maybe a few years already.
Yeah,
And
but the
they,
thing is that most of them are exhausted because they started exhausted. They were scared. They were nervous. They never had done it before. And they thought that the way I teach in class is the same way I teach online. These are two different worlds. They're not the same. And if
wow.
if you're not using, engaging methodologies, and something that really keeps the students, occupied, not just with a game like Kahoot or something like that, because that's fun for about a few minutes, and how many times can you play Kahoot, or how many times can you do Flipgrid or something like that? You got to do something else that is longer lasting, where the students really apply the language in an interdisciplinary approach, where they learn about the world around them and discover, and it's a journey for them and they love it. And you don't have to play games with them to try to keep them occupied. And we already know that grammar exercises are going to bore them to death. So why not do something interesting with them and let them create? They love it. I believe just like a manager, employees need task and learners need task. And if you give them good, interesting, and challenging tasks, just like a manager would do at work, you're a great teacher and you're leading them to deeper learning. And that's what they really want to do.
Absolutely. And here is another insight from my side. Because of your presentation, a brilliant one. Students learn about their culture first. You see,
Oh,
as language teacher, you have described this situation. The capital of the USA, of the UK, and London is the capital of, and all of these things, but they don't know, they have no idea. Before we have started, we jumped into the PBL. They didn't know anything about Russian culture. How to say dumpling? What is okay, what about Russian cuisine and all of the things like that?
yes. I
In
wish I
English,
wish I could
new.
show you. I've been working in Moscow for a long time now. And we had a German team who was working with a Russian team. And I have to say that I was so frustrated in the beginning because I was like, how am I going to get this German team? Because they had to speak English to work with one another. But that wasn't my biggest problem because, their English was not, wasn't fantastic, but, it was okay for a starter. What the problem was that the Russians didn't understand the Germans and the Germans didn't understand the Russians. So I said, okay, we're going to solve this in another way. We're going to brainstorm. And we had the Russians live on camera in a conference room and the Germans were live on camera here. And I told them, let's brainstorm. What do the Russians need to know from the Germans so that you think you can understand it? And what do the Germans need to know from the Russians? And we brainstormed everything. I told them, okay, I'm flying to Moscow with the German team. We're going to come over there and we're going to have one great day of learning, a little bit of, other things too, going out and having nice lunch and dinner. But we had a one-day workshop where all my Russian colleagues taught the Germans about Russian culture and taught them 10 important words that they needed to know. They taught them about Russian food and about, the different, parts of Russia and the cities, what was nice to do in Moscow. And the Germans taught the Russians the same thing. The Russians had to learn 10 German words that were important when they came to Germany. And I taught them all of this in English. It was a project project-based learning. They absolutely love it. To this day, I repeat the class once a year because it's so fantastic.
It's amazing. I would love to be part of this one day. I think one of my wishes on my list. And yes, I got it from Christina. Yeah, you have generously answered on her question, and you made so excited. So excited, all the people here. I guess God bless you is coming to run from Alina. Thank you for your amazing webinar. All work shared with us. Yeah, passionate. And from Egypt, your passion. Oh my gosh, these
Well,
are
those
the
of you
words.
in Egypt, I'm going to be doing a webinar in Egypt probably in about 6 weeks. So stay tuned.
Yeah, all the contacts are in the collection. I have shared words. Please check out the chat, okay, the Q&A box, and you will find it. From tomorrow. Oh my God, thank you. They're so excited. Clap, clap. Oh, thank you from me too that I invited you on because you are the rock star.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So much passion. And so I can't stop showing you all the appreciation words.
Well,
Very true.
I hope
Yeah.
that they, learned a little bit. My goal was to make people curious about PBL and not make it so theoretical. But, got to talk about some of the concepts of PBL. But again, go to pblworks.org. The leader of it, you're going to get so much free information. You're just going to be enthralled by all of it. And you're not even going to know where to start, but you got to start somewhere. Listen to some videos on YouTube about PBL, get you going with it, and use some of my graphic facilitators to maybe give you some ideas. But the only way to get good at PBL is you got to start somewhere. You're going to make mistakes. This is okay. I made a lot of mistakes in the beginning. But I would like to, here's a book that you can, Hacking, project-based learning, a great
Wow.
book that that you can use. Okay, it's by someone in the United States, and this right here is, buy it. It's great. 10 important points, and of course you're going to get my PDF if you subscribe. But another book that I highly recommend is, there are other methodologies to use, and get Scott Thornberry's 30 language teaching methods. That's also a great book to have too. And for those of you who will be getting a copy of the PDF that I'm sending you, print them out, cut them up, paste them on some cardboard like I did, and just keep them all together. Like I said, I have 50 of them here. You can see these here. And you can have 50 lessons ready to go, ready for 50 different PBL projects. That will keep you busy for about 2 years.
Wow, amazing. Here is the question from Maria. How old are your youngest students from?
Well, I have to be careful, but I have let some students in who are 12 years old at our school. I do have I say 14, but when I got to meet the young man, his parents brought him to my school, and I got to meet him, and he was autodidactic. He could speak very good English, but he was shy. And it was just amazing. That young boy grew up now he's married now. He just got married, and I have to say that it's just amazing that I was with him all these years. He turned to be just a totally different person. But the youngest person I've taken in my programs was 12. I do not work with primary school age children for many, many reasons. That is a different kind of pedagogy. So it requires different skills from a teacher. And I just, I'm specialized in, I'm a secondary school teacher. And also, but, I teach university and corporate as well. But, I am the owner of several schools, not just a lecturing professor, but I own my own schools and, developed the concepts there for our school. And our school is known throughout Northern Europe. Now we, of course, are totally online. So that question about, and how do you do it online? It's the only thing I do online.
Great. Wow.
And my oldest student, well, she didn't ask about the oldest student.
Oh,
The oldest student I had is 67 years old.
Once again, could you repeat the number?
The oldest student I've had is 67.
I thought 16%. That
67 years old. Mm-hmm. It is a woman who was a retired teacher, had been retired for 2 years, and she said, "I don't care if I'm retired. I want to learn that." And I have a group of teachers who are retired. They're my little army. They're my volunteers. And they come and they help me to teach. And they do it for free because they love it. They are they can't stop teaching. And so they come and they help me with the younger teenagers because I need help with the teenagers. I can't do it by myself.
It's amazing. And someone has just joined from Turkey, and you can watch this webinar because it's going to be on YouTube, because I don't want to hide it from anyone. It's so precious. Another, thank you so much for your kind words. And you did it from Tamar. I always scared with PBL, and now I'm not. Oh, this is amazing. You just need to start, as Ron just mentioned.
Yeah, just start. And again, you're going to make mistakes in the beginning, but that's how we learn. That's how we learn.
Yeah. And
somebody wrote, somebody wrote, wash hands. Thanks a million. Great from Algeria. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing how many people came here from all over the world. Anna, I want to thank you for inviting me. Again, I'll send all that information to you. It's been wonderful sharing all of this with you and your group of followers. Again, as a reward to your followers and to those who want to, have this information, I will send Anna the PDF. You will get that, and you can write her, and she'll send that to you if you subscribe to her channel. Thank you, Anna.
So much. Thanks, everyone. Thank you for joining. Thank you so much, Dr. Morrain. You are incredible, amazing, and
Thank you.
thank you for so many insights. Bye, everyone. See you soon. Goodbye.
Bye.